Okay. Well, we're going to go ahead and, yep. Connection timed out. Let me try that again. All right. Had problems establishing the stream it's going through this time and without any problems, looks like. Or maybe it is going to have a problem. I don't know. Looks like Facebook is being a little fussy. Sorry about this. Okay. Well, let me add one more thing here real quick. Okay. Okay. All right. We're not going to worry about the Facebook live stream. All right. So we'll go ahead and get things started. Okay. All that being said, let's go ahead and let me start this meeting off by thanking everyone for coming to this special meeting of the Riverdale City Council. I'm the Mayor, Mike Bodden. Today is Tuesday, May 4th, 2021. The time is 7:04 p.m. So today we have a limited agenda, and I'll be covering that here momentarily. But first, I want to go ahead and do a quick roll call if we can, and then we'll do a quick saying of the Pledge of Allegiance. So for the council members who are present, let me go ahead and ask you to indicate your presence by saying aye when I call your name. Doug Littrell.
Aye.
Paul DeCamp.
Aye.
Kelly Crowell.
Aye.
Anthony Heddleston.
Aye.
Kevin Adams. Let the record show Kevin Adams is not able to attend tonight, so he will be counted as absent. We do have a quorum, though. We have got 4 of the 5 council members present. And so let's go ahead and get started by saying a quick Pledge of Allegiance. If I could. I don't have an American flag, and I don't know if anyone else does, but please, there we go. Paul's got one. We'll go ahead and say Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great. Paul, thank you very much for being our flag bearer.
You're welcome.
Okay, the agenda real quick, just so that everyone knows, we've got 4 resolutions that are on the table, 3 of which were tabled at the last meeting, 1 of which was not approved. So we had to make some additional, or have some additional discussions, and now it's up for reconsideration. So that will be the first resolution that we take on is 2021-16. It's a resolution to consider the City of Riverdale's fiscal 22 budget. Then the following 3 resolutions were the ones that were tabled. That's 2021-13. It's a resolution related to the urban renewal area for the Fenno Hill area. And the the next resolution is 2021-14. It's a resolution approving and authorizing the execution of a development agreement between the City of Riverdale and Belmont Development Properties, which is Craig Windmiller and his team who want to build some townhouse apartments on Belmont Road. And then the third tabled resolution that we'll be considering is a resolution approving an engineering services agreement related to that Belmont townhome project for $6,000. So that being said, I'd like to go ahead and start with the, I'm assuming that there are no additional modifications because this was a special agenda for a special meeting. If I'm wrong there, please let me know if any council members have any additional agenda items, but there shouldn't be because we're pretty tight as far as what this meeting was going to be about. We do have a regular council meeting scheduled for a week from tonight. And so as always, if you have any items or information you would like added to that agenda, please get those to Kent by Thursday midday so that he and Katie can work those into the packet and get those out to you all with the council packet that should be delivered Friday afternoon. Okay, let's go ahead and take up resolution 2021-16. This is a resolution considering the City of Riverdale's fiscal 22 budget.
Mike,
Yes.
Kevin, just as a note, Kevin joined us.
Oh, great. Kevin, welcome.
Hey, Rubber Duck, this is Bandit. Radio check, over.
Well, thanks, Rubber Duck. Just make sure that you don't end up with the smoky on your tail or whatever that is. I don't know. I'm not a Tom T. Hall aficionado, but that's stuff I can do.
That's why I'm late. I had a DOT inspection, so I think I will mute myself and listen now.
No, that's great. And Kev, just so that you know, the first thing we're doing is we're going to go over the city budget. I'm going to provide a little bit of background. I have had an opportunity to have conversations with Paul and with Kelly since the last meeting. And so maybe if they can chime in and provide some additional input based on those conversations. But then I would like you to feel free, if you've got any remaining items or issues, since you're the third no vote from last week, if you have any additional items that you want to make sure we talk about, then I'm going to ask you to go ahead and chime in, okay? I'm going to take that as a 10-4. All right, so let's, like that, see what I did there? All right, so let me go ahead and start things off. I was fortunate enough to spend some time with both Paul and with Kelly to talk about this issue in a little bit more detail. And I think that many of the concerns that led to their no votes on the certification last week are reflective of some of the concerns and some of the issues that were raised by members of the public, or that have been raised by members of the public to them. And they're certainly valid, and we need to make sure that we address those. So there are a few things that I want to touch on, and then I'll ask Paul and Kelly, like I said, to go ahead and chime in. The first off is that I think that there is some confusion or frustration with regard to kind of like why are we not reducing the total city levy by the amount of the general obligation bond relief of the general obligation bond that is paid off as of the end of this fiscal year. And primarily what that relates to is it relates to a change in kind of a long-term shift that we've talked about on a number of different occasions with regard to financial management for the city. If you take a look at the other cities in Scott County, you do not find them having a lot of general obligation bond debt. General obligation bonds were much more a method of financing large purchases and large projects, requiring referendums and things like that from a decade or more ago. Today, a lot of those larger projects are financed through other borrowing type instruments like state revolving loan funds, or through grants or other things like that. What the city has done basically, though, is that we accumulated that debt and kind of paid for that street project with those bonds. In the meantime, we've been, taxing at one level and amassing a general fund surplus, and we need to work on working down that surplus. And I think that we all agree on that. And in fact, if you take a look then at the total amount of money that's been spent, or the amount of money that we've been taxing over the last 4 years or 4 or 5 years, we've seen a steady decline in the total city levy as opposed to just one levy or another. So if we take a look at it on aggregate, in fact, the proposal for the fiscal 22 budget is at a lower total city levy versus the previous year. That being said, I do think that in my conversations with both Paul and Kelly, there were a couple of items that were in the budget that they felt maybe, or that Paul, especially when we were talking, he didn't really see those as being super necessary right now. So if we work on kind of removing some of those additional projects that we don't think are necessary, and we change the amount of money that we need to borrow, or that we would be spending out of the basically on our capital and one-time projects, but keep the amount of the general fund surplus, that amount kind of in line with what was projected, you end up seeing a reduction in the total, in the general fund levy as well. That would be probably more along the lines of where we're hoping to end up. So we've done a little bit of homework there so that we can go ahead and determine what that is. But I'm going to let Paul kind of outline where his concerns were there. The more important part of the conversations I think that came out of this is that a great deal of the frustration, I think, and confusion related to how the city is moving forward with handling this surplus amount relates to what is the purpose, or what's the plan for the surplus. If you'll remember 2 years ago, we tried to define that. I wrote a pretty lengthy memo that said, hey, I think we ought to be spending it here and here and here and here and here. And we didn't really follow through on that memo. I've now worked up kind of an alternative structure to that would say, look, if we take a look at that general fund surplus and treated it more as operating capital, as opposed to kind of a rainy day fund that's out there, the difference between that is that if you use it as operating capital, the idea generally is to go ahead and tap into that general fund surplus to be able to get projects done, but every year keep putting some money back into that operating capital fund so that you can spend it again on other big projects. In order to do that, though, you need to have a long-term financial plan. And you guys know this was part of the outline for what we hope to accomplish over the last 12 months. We've made some progress on it. I think we can have it wrapped up by the end of the year, is to actually have a 5-year financial plan that lays out what are the big projects that we need to do, how are we going to do those, what are the maintenance projects that we should be having every year, and how are we going to kind of basically establish the benchmarks for what that amount of spending should be, and then how are we going to handle the variable operating costs. And if you take a look at the spreadsheet that I tried to provide and walk everyone through the last couple of times, it really does break down our budget into 3 areas. And one is those annual variable operating costs. The second one is annual expense items that are annual expense item that would go into funding some of these larger projects or larger purchases. And the third is one-time projects that might be just like something in a specific area for just 1 year, like a certain study or something like that for, I don't know, like the engineering work for the emergency roadway that needs to be constructed between Woods Addition and the Pleasant Hills Addition. Okay, so the idea is really to kind of break the budget down into that, make budgeting simpler, be able to project it out over a longer period of time, be able to take a look at what that does to the overall tax levy so that we have better control long-term over what the tax rates are going to be, and really create a facility or a structure that will require big purchases to be identified early on so that there's lots of time to talk about them and to talk about, are there other ways that we can go ahead and finance this? Or if we want this certain piece of equipment, whether it's playground equipment or fire equipment or something for City Hall or whatever, we'd be identifying it instead of identifying it a couple months before we want to go ahead and buy it. It really would require us to be thinking about these things longer term and say, you know what, we can see where in 2 years we're going to need to be able to do this. So let's start talking about it now and figure out a better way to handle that. And I think that with that kind of structure in place, I think that what we'd be looking at is, I think people would feel much more comfortable with how these budgets are developed. The final piece on that, and I've talked to both Kelly and to Paul about this, and we don't need to go into a lot of detail about it tonight because this really is not tied to the certification of the budget. But in order to do those things and have those conversations, we probably need to create some sort of budget committee that is charged with the responsibility of creating that long-term and financial plan and helping the city stick to it. Now, there's a couple of reasons we want to do that. Number one, it would basically take that responsibility and kind of institutionalize it so that there's no like last minute, oh, hey, let's go ahead and do this, and it's only $200,000 and we've got the money, so let's go ahead and spend it kind of decision making. Number two, it gives citizens who aren't on the city council an opportunity to be actively involved in crafting that budget, maybe even more so than just doing the intake meetings that we have been doing. Third, it would be that committee's responsibility to take a look at individual line items in the budget and determine whether or not we're really getting the benefit that justifies the cost for those. So we'll be able to do cost benefit studies, which, as you know, is like something I'm really big on. And then the last thing is that someone, and this is a failing on my part, I don't know how to write a budget amendment. So, and we really do need to have budget amendments come before the council so that they can officially designate any movement of funds that are needed between one account and another as far as the departments go, so that we're in compliance with state guidelines, but also so that citizens are aware as to how the city's spending its money. So all that being said, those are all conversations that need to take place after the budget is certified. The reason we need to certify the budget tonight, whether in its current form or in some amended form, is that we really do have a very tight deadline now to go ahead and get a budget filed with the state so that we don't run the risk of losing any of our local option sales tax money or our road use funds. That could cost the city $150,000 to $200,000 if we blow the deadline. So there's a very real reason why we need to go ahead and take this into consideration and move forward with it. Now, that being said, I'm going to ask Paul to chime in first, and then I'm going to ask Kelly, and then I'm going to ask Kevin, and then I'm going to open it up to Doug and Anthony to see if they have any additional questions as well. And if you are a citizen and listening in on this and have a question or a comment right now before we begin deliberation, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and send me a chat message. I've got the chat window open, and I'll make sure that we can work you into the conversation. Okay, so Paul, why don't you go ahead and go?
Okay, thanks, thanks, Mayor. I guess kind of thinking about everything leading up to this point. I would say I wasn't prepared to approve the budget last Tuesday due to a number of what I consider concerns that I'd have, and I really wanted to work through some of those things with the mayor and others. But I maybe describe it as if you think about kind of the historical perspective of our tax levies, especially if you go back maybe around to there's a couple of big events that have impacted us significantly. One being the change to the machine and equipment tax, which really shifted quite a lot of burden over to the residents. And you can see that effect if you look at just a list of over a number of years. You can see, oh yeah, that's the year that took place. And you can also see the year that we passed a bond referendum that allowed us to do the big Pleasant Hills Street project. And then there was a additional bond that you can tell that was also added to our debt obligations, and all those things kind of jack up, and it's almost like a ratcheting thing. You can see it year over year. We're going up, and then eventually, I think around 2015, we really hit our max. I guess what kind of concerned me, because I'm aware that we're borrowing or we're paying off our debt, and at the same time we're applying taxes, and we're doing so in excess of what was really required by the city. So I felt like that was a situation that I thought was unfair to the residents, and I wanted to avoid. So the good news was that we retired some of our bond obligation, and you can see the effect of that in even with the proposal that Mike put forward, that it's like the lowest it's been since since the machine equipment tax change. So the general, I think, is that's proposed there is at that lowest point. But still, I had in mind that while I supported Mike's concept there, the one that's where we say We want to run that general like an operating budget, and do forward planning. I thought that was exactly a good practice, but just being aware of kind of our history, I'd say my concern was that there's maybe just enough of a lack of continuity in our city government where we might have a plan, but when we get a new mayor, new council, and other city administration changes, there could be a lot of as far as their own choices about how they want to spend the money could be not necessarily following what that plan was. And I could see a kind of a repeat of that 2012 through 15 time where we're both increasing the general plus maybe increasing our bond obligation. So, what I talked to Mike about was, I felt like if there's any way that we could put some guardrails on kind of our budget planning in such a way that we could more maybe rely on that plan was more likely to be adopted and followed. I think that would improve our odds of avoiding a situation where we add to our debt in the future, and improve our odds of really keeping it at what I see as a good level. I mean, if we have our general and it's kind of potentially less than what it would be this year, in the 6 to 7% range for the total, not the general, but the total. I think that would be historically great. So, I think that's a worthwhile goal, but, and then, how do we get there? How do we get those guardrails? And so I think, what, you and I were talking about in terms of a budget committee, and actually having a fairly well-defined 5-year plan, I think really gets us a good bit of the way there. And then, like you described the process for engagement with people, I think, that would be a critical thing too. And then, I think the other part of it that I'd really like to see was something you and I talked about, was to actually, maybe put a little bit of Riverdale code that actually define that this is our process, so, we've decided that this is what our process will be. And then the code says going forward that this is what the city says it should be. So I think assuming, based on agreement with everybody, if everybody in the council thinks that approach is a good approach, then, I would be able to support the budget with maybe a couple of, like you mentioned, 2 or 3 items that, I think, and I wouldn't say I remove, like you and I talked about, it's, it's maybe finding an alternative, no cost approach to accomplishing the same thing. So if we can get zoning and planning and zoning to do the comprehensive plan, then that would save us a consulting fee. And then, but the main point is we need to, if we do that, we have to have the commitment. We need a goal, a deadline, some gates defined, and then a commitment from the people involved that they'll pursue it. So, and same with, I think I felt that way about the consulting line items. And then, I think we talked a little bit around the signage question. I'd be interested to hear what others have to say about that. But, if we took out the consulting line items costs, what do you think, where would we be about for levy wise?
Well, I mean, I kind of ran some preliminary numbers based on what we talked about, Paul, and I think that we'd be probably dropping, anywhere from $70,000 to $90,000 out of those projects and off the budget, which may not on the surface sound like a lot, but when you consider that the total tax levy generates, around $600,000, you drop 90,000 off, you're down. I mean, that's 15% or so, and that would get us down to about 6.25, maybe, instead of $6.80. So yeah. It'd be I mean, it's still a pretty significant drop. It's not as low as we were this last year, but you know, for the last 2 years, we've been pretty low, and we've been paying for some operating things out of our budget surplus that, yeah, we could continue to do that for a couple more years, like paying
Yeah.
for staff and things like that. But
The
those are
staff
really
has to,
operating.
you know, we have to consider the staff, which was
Right.
not in last year's budget. So
Right. So that's kind of where the things you and I talked about. That's kind of where it would come in at. But do you have anything else that you want to add before we go to Kelly?
you know, I think that's basically the main points for me.
Okay. Kelly, how about you? You've had a chance, we had a little bit of a chance to go ahead and talk about this stuff earlier today, and I tried to answer your questions. And did anything else come to mind, or do you have any comments or statements you want to go ahead and offer up?
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you sound great.
Good. I appreciated your time today and you emailing me all of the information that you sent me. And I guess the main concern I had when I voted against the budget last week was I didn't, even though and tell me if I get some of these things wrong, even though the general levy, is that the $6.80?
Mhm.
Okay. Even though the general levy was going up, the total overall tax per thousand was staying about the same. Actually, I see in the email you sent me, it's actually lower, right?
Mhm.
My concern with that was if we are reducing or eliminating our debt service part because we're paying off those bonds, then why would we need to collect more because we have this surplus? And my concern was I don't want to keep adding to this surplus. Like we're trying to get rid of this surplus. I don't want to make it worse, you know? But I really appreciated how you explained your plan to me today. And I really think it's a great plan to have maybe a budget committee and council, you know, decide for real exactly how we want to spend this money, move it into those line items, create long-term plans for things like road maintenance, vehicle maintenance, building maintenance, park maintenance, those types of things, projecting out how much money we'll need at what intervals so we know how much money to put in each of those line items so that these things, instead of, like you're saying, us being in panic mode and all of a sudden now we need to pull money from one place to spend in another or from this surplus or whatever, we've planned for as many things as we can. So if that's the case and we have a purpose for doing that, and we've identified, or we will identify what we're going to use that money for, and if everyone on council and you agree that this is what we're going to do, we're not just going to let this money sit here, and we commit to the fact that we are going to do these projects, we are going to have timelines, they will be executed, the money will be spent to make our city better, then I don't have any issue with that.
Mhm.
And if one of the ways to make sure that happens is by ordinance or resolution, you know, solidifying the process, then I'm all for that.
Okay.
But yeah, I really think we need to be proactive and plan out like 1 year, 5 year, 10 years.
Mhm.
And you can't account for emergencies like Fenno Drive collapsing, you know, or road. You can't foresee those things, but for the things you can foresee, I think it would be great not to have to issue bonds or take out huge loans and to be able to use money that we already have set aside.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
the way you explained it to me today, I love the idea, just as long as everyone is on board and we do the hard work. And, you know, if that's the case, then I'm okay with the budget as it is.
Okay.
Yep.
Great. Kevin, I'm going to go to you while you're driving or whatever, while you're remote. Do you have any additional thoughts or questions that we might be able to address?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Well, some of the stuff like is for later discussion, I guess, like budget committee and everything. But
Mhm.
pertaining to this particular budget, is Anthony on?
Yep. He's here.
Well, because I had talked with Anthony, and because I'm still working and driving, I don't have my paper in front of me, and I don't know what I took the general levy percentage down to, and I was wondering if he remembered. I know how I
546.
got there. Okay. I took the general levy number down to what Anthony just said. I had cut off about 100,000 out of the general fund budget. I like the tree thing I cut out, and because I want more information. I don't like plugging in big numbers without some background or some feedback or some input from somebody. Same way with, there's like 50,000 in playground equipment or something. And like the dollar amounts that I took out added up to more than 100,000, but I still wanted to leave some money in those categories. I like the category thought, but I need more info before I'm willing to commit to $50,000 for trees. Like, well, what's the plan for the trees? Like, that's what I want to hear. And then pertaining to the bond issue, I kind of took, I think that there's a dollar amount attached to that, maybe like $3 and some odd cents for the Manor Drive bond.
Mhm.
I kind of I split that in half. So that way I didn't take all of the money off the bond, and putting it all back in the public. But I think they should and have a right to realize some of those savings of it, because we do have such a surplus. I mean, the money that I took out of the budget, I'm not saying I wouldn't vote for it. I just want more information on it. So those were I also took I took off, I don't remember the dollar amount, but some of the committee stuff and some of the things in the capital improvements I took off. But that was my number. I think there could be more of a reduction than what there is. Like, I'm just not comfortable with the budget and just plugging in some of these big numbers without there being more information. And if ever there's a year that we can really dive in and get the information, it would be a year like this to do that in going forward. So that's all I got.
Okay, so I'm going to summarize this and then you tell me how close I am. So it sounds to me like you're saying you'd rather see us not move forward with a variety of line items that I'm guessing Anthony may be able to provide some insight there. But basically cutting out enough in terms of expenses that the general levy ends up being around $5.11 instead of what are we right now? We're at $8 and something, right? Isn't that right? Hold on a second.
So, Mike, when we were talking about it the other night, he was just talking about the 680.
Oh,
so the 680 would go down to 546, and when we were looking through the stuff he'd drawn up.
Oh, okay. All right, that's helpful. So instead of 680, it'd be 546?
That's correct.
Okay, so we'd be at 546, but instead of the $3 and something, whatever, as far as the general obligation relief that goes away, you'd actually only realize half of that. So I'm guessing half of that would stay in. So that, I guess that gets us up to I don't know. It sounds to me like we're probably within $1 of each other. Is that, Anthony, am I close? If you look at the total general levy?
Yeah, no, it's pretty, levy? Yeah, it's pretty close. Maybe even less than that, actually.
Okay. So, because here's the deal, just to kind of help clarify things, and maybe this wasn't real apparent. Once the general obligation bonds are paid, that tax goes away in total. So you can't just like take half the relief. All of that goes away. So if you say, well, if we're okay with having half of it go away and the other half, we'd still want to collect. What you're talking about doing is adding that to the general fund levy. So that kind of gets us, I think, pretty close on the general fund levy. But I think your point is important, Kevin, in terms of saying you still don't feel like that there is enough clarity for you as to what those longer term plans are for, like, why is the forestry management, why is there park equipment, why are these numbers where they are in terms of just what's in the allocation for money that would go into paying for those kind of programs, because we don't have solid proposals on them yet. And the general sense I hear from you is you'd rather not have those hit this year, have us develop the plan, and then come back and take a look down the road as to what those numbers, and maybe those numbers are different at that point. Is that close?
That does sound close. I get, and correct me if I'm wrong in my thought process, but specifically those two items as examples, the forestry and the park equipment, if we took those out, and yet in the next span of the next 3 or 4 months, we got some proposals and decided to do them, we have some money to still be able to do them. Is that correct or no?
Well, what we have is we have general fund surplus. And I guess what I'm saying is that in the budget, and I'm not even, I think this is all really good, constructive conversation. In the budget, there are these annual budget allocations where we're talking about there'd be so much that would be collected in general fund revenue that would go into a fund that would cover these long-term projects or these capital projects. And it's the difference between treating the general fund surplus as a rainy day fund, where it's like, if something happens, we write a check out of the general fund surplus. We don't have to worry about replacing the money. And if you treat it like operating capital, what you say is, we're going to go ahead and pay for this thing, or we're going to pay for this program, but then we're going to go ahead and continue to collect revenue and put that money back in so we can go ahead and spend that money again on another big project that we see down the road. Why would you do one as opposed to the other? If you treat the general fund surplus like it's a rainy day fund, what you're doing is basically spending what you've got, and then the next time another big project comes along, then you either need to raise taxes if you can do it within your taxing limit, or you're going to have to pass a referendum and get the community to go ahead and agree to either a special tax or special assessment, or a tax increase above the statutory limit, or whatever. So, and there's always a chance, of course, that they may say no for whatever reason. So that's the hazard of kind of just treating it like a piggy bank and a rainy day fund, where you don't worry about putting money back in, as opposed to operating capital, where you say, look, we've got a plan and we're going to be doing certain things along the way. And in order to pay for $40,000 worth of turnout gear for the fire department in 4 years, we're going to collect $10,000 a year and pay for it then when we've got the money saved up, as opposed to having a $40,000 number hit us in the head in just 1 year. And that's really,
yeah, but that's not what I'm saying at all.
Okay, all right.
So,
but that's why the
what
park equipment, that's why the park equipment number, and maybe that wasn't clear, but that is
what
like the park equipment number.
What I'm saying is that the trees and the park equipment as examples, if we, I'm not saying that we shouldn't have a plan, just like what you're talking about, but for this one particular year, I would like to see the plan, and we have time to see the plan. And if the plan came in and we need to contribute $50,000 this year, and then in the next year's budgets contribute $50,000 more, then I'm all for it. But I think this particular year, I would like to take that money out, have time to see the plan, and really get a good number of what it is. It could be $10,000 a year. It could be $100,000 a year. I don't know. I'm just not comfortable of plugging $50,000 in, like, based on what? I mean, I've seen no proposal for anything.
Mhm.
And so if we did decide that the tree service and management needed $50,000 in there this year, we have the funds to put that in this year. I'm not saying eliminate it and just treat general
Right.
fund as rainy day fund forever.
But those funds would come out of the general fund surplus, and you're not raising money to replace it yet.
For 1 year.
But maybe
for
but maybe
1
that is
year.
part of what you decide down the road. Yeah. So
Say that last part again.
so what I'm hearing is you do it just this 1 year if we need it, and in the meantime we take the year to develop the plan.
Absolutely, yeah. Like,
Yeah.
I mean,
And adjust the
like,
tax rates accordingly then.
you could take any line item. You could say, hey, Kelly, here's $50,000 for festivals this year. I mean, why don't we just do that? I mean, well, because we would want to know what justifies $50,000 going for festivals or landscaping or anything. I mean, that's a significant amount of money. It's not $5,000. I mean, $50,000. I want to see where that number is generated from. That's all. And this one particular year, we have the time to do it. And if we need to put in $50,000, we have some surplus to do it. I'm not saying by no means. I love the idea of the long-term planning, but I just don't agree with the numbers in this year, and that's all.
Oh, no. And I think that that's a legitimate, absolutely legitimate concern and complaint. So yeah, I think I understand where you're coming from, and I appreciate that. Let's go ahead and move on, unless you have something else you want to add. Okay, let's go ahead and ask Doug, do you have any additional thoughts or comments you want to add?
Yeah, just a dumb question.
Yeah.
On the capital projects list here, third one down is air compressor, electric fans. I thought them were already paid for.
No, nope. They're just.
I thought them came out of the general fund.
Nope. No, we haven't bought those yet. Those were on the capital list that we got from the fire department this couple months ago. We
got the stuff and it wasn't paid for?
No, we don't have those.
I think Doug is thinking about the SCBA things and the machine to refill the machines.
Maybe.
Refill the air, and this is different.
Yeah. This is something different, Doug. These are 3 electric fans to help with ventilation.
Okay.
On site, and then there was one other piece of equipment.
Air compressor attachment. Oh, okay, I see.
No, this was new stuff.
All right, and the other, the apron.
Yes.
That's been asphalted over.
Right.
Is that just a temporary thing? I don't know what it takes to put, when we say fix the apron, what are they saying? Put a piece of steel in there?
Well, I think that there's going to need to be some study done on that to determine exactly what's got to be done. But the repair that we made to it that we hoped was going to suffice was basically grinding down those entrances to try to make them smoother going in. And that didn't quite work. Kent, you've got something you want to add there?
Yeah, so what we did is we took some asphalt, some cold patch asphalt, and made a ramp to protect the floor of the fire department. What we've asked Chris to do, this is actually one of the major projects that if you do approve the budget, the contract will be on the next council agenda. But we need to look at the structure of the apron to the front because of the weight of those trucks coming in. If they're fully loaded with water, it will just depress the concrete. So yes, we fixed it. And I use quotation marks. We fixed it, but we didn't do it the correct way. We just put a Band-Aid on it.
Okay.
And that's about all we've done.
All right.
Yep.
Okay. Well then, okay. I guess I just didn't understand. Okay, well, but like I say, nevertheless, Kevin had some good ideas, but I'm still a yes.
Yep. Okay. Thank you. Anthony, you want to chime in?
So my only thing here is, again, I understand the wanting to cut stuff and get this realization from, this other thing going away, but the other part of this is that if you look at what we've spent over the past few years, we average out about $550,000, and we get, again, that 150 to 200 from other funds. And so I guess my kind of bottom line is I don't feel comfortable going below our average budget of actual these kind of expenditures, the base kind of stuff, not the extra bigger capital projects, minus those other funds we're going to get in, which gives us about 375. And I'm comfortable going up about 10. I wouldn't want to go any more than 10% of where we're already at either. But anyway, if the cutbacks here get too low, I'm not going to be in support of this. So I think it's fiscally irresponsible to just cut and try to say we're going to pay for it out of this other pot of money. I understand the sentiment, and I just don't think it's fiscally responsible. So
okay,
that's where I'm at.
Great. So we do have one resident with a question. Let's go ahead and go to Eric. Go ahead.
I guess it was less of a question, more a comment, if you're willing to take comment. I guess I'm more inclined, after listening to all these discussions, to go the direction kind of Kevin's going. Philosophically, I guess that's where I'd push the budget path, leaner, a little tighter, think harder about how we're spending money, really think hard about spending the citizens' money. Is it worth it? Are you willing to spend X number of dollars out of your personal budget, family budget, on this project or that project? And I think we have that accumulated surplus that's been built up over 15 years or so. I think we ought to use that on capital projects that are necessary, that improve the quality of the city, that the things that we all agree need to be done. I think the state said get that number down to what y'all agreed was a acceptable reserve of 600, I think maybe was a number that Kent was okay with. So my push would be go that direction. And then I just think that the council has to take that into the philosophical direction. I would say, run it tighter, run it leaner, and think about, we added salaries this last year that never been in the budget before. I think, what's that run up to be, 150 with benefits and costs or some number?
130, yeah.
130. So, you got to account for that somewhere. That has to be cut or taxed for. So I think the council has to take that into consideration looking forward. So those are my comments on that matter.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
This is Steve.
Steve.
Yes.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah, the 30,000 for the comprehensive plan. I believe planning and zoning can do that. Just put it online for the residents and we send them a letter and then let them get comments. The aldermen, councilors for the new subdivision on Belmont, and just make a few modifications. I can't see 30,000. We spent 15,000 on the park plan, and they missed a dump where Bettendorf's dumping tires and oil and stuff in our forest reserve. So, how could they miss that when you can see it from the street? So some of these consultants just piss me off that the stuff they're missing. And the questionnaire that you had to fill out for that was way over the board. Were you in the military and all these other questions? I didn't fill it out. So that was a little too much. And then the new signs for the city, I was here when we put the last sign in, and then you put residents, so many, and one old fart, so what control do we have over what's on these signs? And that comes out $250 for every household in this city. We know where we live. Nobody else does. It doesn't help. They don't know where the college is. They don't know where the high school is. They think it's in Bettendorf. So I just don't see the point.
Okay. I think that you would find a like-minded soul in Paul DeCamp on a lot of those issues, right, Paul? Oop.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, my thought, Steve, was, it'd be really for marketing, and, I don't know if there's really much to market. So, and I only heard a couple of people who ever actually expressed interest in creating new signage. But, I think the mayor brought up a point where whether we create new signs, we may want to at least have a say in what signs would look like if signs were to be put up. So, that's a thought, but maybe that doesn't require any allocation necessarily.
Right. The cost number, just as a point of reference, the cost number that was included in the budget was based upon conversations with 3 different landmark signage contractors to come up with some ideas and recognition of the fact that Woods Estates will be erecting a sign for their addition sometime in the future, and we may want to make sure that we are involved in that conversation and make sure that the landmark signage for the city looks consistent from neighborhood to neighborhood and along the city. But that's another debate for a separate meeting, and not necessarily a decision that's going to that needs to be made as part of the budget certification process. But I think those are all good comments, Steve, and duly noted.
And-
Do you have anything else you wanted to add?
Yeah, the parks. I was a certified playground inspector for 6 years for the Army, and I went around the country putting new playground in for the soldiers' children. And our parks need some improvement, but they were closed for half the year. And with new variants, stuff could come back around. You're closing the park again. So I could see, 20 or 30,000. Just make a plan every year, incremental. Do 1, 2, 3 new pieces of equipment, but why dump 50,000 in and the parks get closed again?
Yep.
That's all I got.
Good points. Good points. All right. So without hearing anything else from any other citizen, we need to go ahead and consider this resolution. And once it's up for consideration, deliberation by members of the council can offer up amendments to it. And if we need to amend the resolution and amend the proposed budget, we can do it at that time. And then we need to make a vote as to whether or not we're going to certify this budget and file it with the county. All right, so I need a motion and a second.
Honey,
Yeah. I'm sorry, who was that? Oh, okay, I need a motion.
So moved.
Okay, I have a motion from Paul. I need a second.
Second.
I have a second from Kelly. All right, let's go ahead and let me ask this right now. Do we have any proposed amendments to the budget as it's currently presented that council members would like to have considered?
Well,
Kelly.
there was a lot of ideas discussed, and it might be difficult to really come to a consensus tonight, but in the very least, it seems like we ought to try to come up with that number that would be the levy rate. If we can do that, then we can we know we can amend a budget in the future.
Okay.
But that would be the one we need to get done tonight.
All righty. So noted. Kelly, did you have something else that you were going to recommend?
Sure. What I was going to say was, is there anybody who absolutely needs things stricken from the proposed budget in order to vote yes? Because if there is, then I think we should take note of those things so that we can have those as the amendment so that we can all vote yes.
Okay.
I don't particularly have any specific item I need struck, but if somebody else does, I can get on board with that.
All right.
I'd like to suggest what you and I had discussed, Mike, which was the maybe set the allocation for 0 for those consulting line items, but not remove, which would allow us to maybe tie some goals and other process things to that line item for tracking.
Okay, I think that's a good suggestion. And if I can maybe kind of help bring some clarity to that, since I was part of that conversation, we
Yeah.
can see if we can come up with an amendment. Paul, what you and I talked about was the need that we don't want to, as an example, with the comprehensive plan, we don't want to eliminate the comprehensive plan line from the budget. We just don't want to spend any money on a comprehensive plan review unless it becomes clear that we need help doing it. So what you and I talked about is let's make sure that that's in that, because the budget serves as kind of an action plan or a blueprint for staff and for the city moving forward, saying these are the things the council felt were important enough, we want to go ahead and do them. So let's make sure we do them. But if we zero out the line item for the comprehensive plan and for the other consultative line items that are in there, and if we do the same with the signage number, which I think is something that Steve brought up, and I know, Paul, you had some questions about, we end up kind of reducing the necessity as far as our capital budget that's in the budget proposal right now, or in the budget as it's currently standing, by about, let's see here. I'm going to end up coming up with just round numbers. Let me look it up here real quick. We end up hold on a second, sorry. Where is that capital projects? The capital projects number ends up dropping by about $130,000, from 400,000 to about 270,000. Okay. If we do that, then we also reduce the requirement for the general fund levy from $6.80 to about $6.26. It's not the 511 that Kevin was talking about, but Kevin was also talking about the 511 plus a little bit of the general obligation money going back into the general fund. So it may actually be closer to kind of what he's thinking about anyway. And that could be an amendment, Paul, is to zero out on the capital and one-time projects list, zero out all the consultative projects and the signage project as an example. Okay, I'm sorry, you're muted.
Rats. Yeah, that's so I'd recommend those.
So you'd like to make that as an amendment then?
Yes, please.
Amendment. Okay, so we have a proposed amendment to make that adjustment to the proposed budget. So we'll just to restate it so that Katie can get this right in the minutes. It would take all of the consultative projects on the capital projects and one-time projects list, and reduce those budget line items to zero, and would also reduce the signage project that's identified down to zero, but it would leave those projects on the list just with no projected spending on them. With the intended effect.
Mayor?
Yeah.
So why couldn't we do the same thing with the trees and the park equipment, or at least reduce it?
We can
from 50 down to 20,000.
And Kevin, you're exactly right. But let's do Paul's amendment first, vote on it, and then we can do yours. Okay? Because that's kind of where I'm going with it. Because I think look, my goal is to make sure we get a budget certified, because we think this is a tough meeting. It's going to be a lot tougher meeting to try to figure out how to find another $300,000 if we lose our local option sales tax and RUT money. Okay. So the amendment is to go ahead and make those adjustments to the capital and one-time project list with the intention of reducing the requirement for tax levy to pay for capital projects by approximately $140,000, and reduce that general fund levy to approximately $6.26. So that's the amendment. You agree with that, Paul?
Yes.
I'm getting a nod, yes. I need a second now to go ahead and second the amendment so we can vote on it. And Kelly, you're muted too.
Second.
There
Sorry.
we go. So that's all right. So we have a motion and a second. This is only on the amendment. This does not certify the budget. We have a motion and a second on the amendment. I'm going to do a quick roll call vote so that we can go ahead and get agreement on the council, and then we will talk to Kevin about his proposed amendment. I'm going to go ahead and do a quick roll call vote. Doug?
Yes.
Doug's an aye. Kelly?
Aye.
Kelly's an aye. Paul?
Aye.
Paul's an aye. Anthony?
Aye.
Anthony's an aye. Kevin?
Aye.
And Kevin is a
Aye.
10-4. All right. Thank you, sir. All right. Now, Kev, let's talk about your amendment. You're talking about reducing. Do you want to stick just to those 2 line items for now, or are there any additional line items that you want to talk about?
Well, there probably is, but I just walked in my door and.
Do you want a minute to think about it?
Well, I mean, those, I guess I'd like to hear if anybody else has any thoughts about at least just reducing them.
Okay. All right. So your proposal, so you would propose that we reduce the forestry line item, which I think is in the parks or in the public grounds department. We would reduce that from the 50,000 that's in the budget to 20, you said? Is that right? Keep in mind, Kev.
Yeah, I guess that's a compromise. You know?
Okay,
Yeah.
well, and I'm not trying to be coy, but like the derecho cleanup, the couple of trees that we cut up there, that was, and Kent can correct me if I'm wrong, but that was $20,000 to $25,000 worth of tree removal, I believe. Is that right, Kent?
Yes, that's correct. Can you hear me?
Okay.
Yes, that's correct, Mayor.
Okay, so Kev, just to give you an idea, that was Fisher's tree and a couple other, some limbs and stuff.
And
That
we
was-
didn't get any reimbursement for that at all?
Well, we did, but when you're saying like, what can you get for $50,000? That gives you an idea of what you can get for 20 to 25,000. Is basically a tree and some additional limbs.
Yeah,
So,
well, I don't care. Like I'm fine with putting 0 in there until I see some kind of a proposal. But
Okay,
that's
well,
what I mean,
And that's just, and
I'm
that's,
not saying that it shouldn't be anything, or I'm just saying I don't know what the number is, and I'd like to see some proposals or bids or something,
okay.
rather than just stick in a number. Because why didn't we stick in $100,000? Because that's probably what's going to take if we really wanted to clean everything up all this year,
Well,
if not more.
Well, the idea with the tree, and maybe this wasn't clear when I was kind of walking everyone through the budget, but the idea with the forestry number in there is that much like with the street maintenance number, it's just an annual number, knowing that there's more work than just that number, but also realizing that it's an annual.
I get that,
plan.
but I'm just, yeah, I totally understand that.
Mhm.
But the $50,000 number came from where? There's no proposal by anybody. There's no nothing. So that's why I'm.
Oh, I
Anyway,
understand.
The forest, yeah. So that we could take it down to 20,000 because I don't want to get rid of it. I think it's
Right.
good. I just want to see a proposal. And then
Okay.
the under culture and recreation,
Uh-huh.
we have, it's item 6310, routine maintenance, renamed playground and park equipment, $25,000.
Right.
Supplies and plantings, renamed park and trail enhancement, $25,000.
Right.
I would like to reduce those down to 0.
Okay.
Keep the line items and get further explanation on what that entails of those 2 things.
Okay. Okay. So in those
'Cause
numbers,
I don't know what those things are.
okay. No, and that's again, those were.
And I don't want to I just don't want to throw money at something that is like, where did that dollar amount come from?
I
And I'm not
understand.
saying it should be 25. It could be 0. It could be 50,000. I don't know.
No, I understand. And both of those line items essentially took that money and made sure that it went into a related fund inside that general fund surplus that we then would be building up to be able to make one-time purchases as needed. So, but what I'm hearing from you, Kevin, is that for you would rather hold off a year on that until that process maybe is better defined, and you
Yes.
feel more confident that that's really what's going to happen. Is that kind of
Yes.
closer to maybe Okay. All
Yep.
right. I just think it's important we all understand where you're coming from. Because I think we all want, we all obviously want the community to be better. It's just a matter of where do we feel comfortable and really feel like we've got a good handle on what's going on.
Well,
So-
and this is why I say I don't want to remove the line item, kind of
Yeah.
like what Paul's doing with the other. I just want to take it so we can get a better understanding. So that's
Okay.
my thoughts.
All right. So
Hey,
let me
Mike,
ask. Oh, go ahead, Paul.
you just a couple of thoughts or questions to Kevin's idea there.
Mhm.
One is, and I don't know if this is true or not, but do you think any of these things requires an outlay just to do kind of the assessment or plan that we want to do? So, if we ask for bids,
Mhm.
that might not necessarily require anything other than we do have to define a statement of work that the
Yeah.
people would bid on. And so I don't know what's cost to be involved in that, but if there's anything that's more like engaging MSA or something that you'd consider designing, taking the plan that we did for the parks and take it a step further, right?
You could be talking 25 grand just for a plan from an engineer. However, and I think that's a really good point, Paul. Let me ask you this, maybe come back to Kevin on this to help us understand kind of what he's thinking. When you say, because I think I understand it a little bit differently, and that is when Kevin says, I'd really like to know what the plan is for tree management. What I'm thinking is that he'd really like to have staff go ahead, sit and identify an arborist or a tree trimming company or a couple of them and say, look, what can we get if we're spending $20,000 a year trimming trees? And they may come back and go like, well, you get you can get like 3 or 4 trees down a year. And we look around and we go like, oh, okay, well, that's not going to be enough. What if we wanted to do this or this or this and just kind of get some seat of the pants numbers? Is that closer to kind of what you're thinking? And like for Parks and Rec to be able to sit down and go like, look, if we wanted to put up some new playground equipment, like one every couple of years, what's it cost? What's a new slide cost? And just kind of like do.
Yeah, if we had
a
a tree service company come in and say, how much would it cost to clean up the trees going up into Woods Estates? What does that cost? Or what's it cost to clean up coming up Manor Drive?
But what you're saying is you really want to get a good general sense of value. Like, okay, so what do we get if we say we want to spend 50 grand on tree cleaning, and are we thinking we're going to be able to clean out all of the Manor Hill Drive going up the hill? No, the guy's going to go like, no, we could probably do, if you spent 50 grand a year for 5 years, we could probably get it ready. Well, then at least we got an idea what that cost might be,
right?
And what that looks like.
Because that number may need to be 100,000 a year if we're happy to really get it cleaned up. I'm just saying I don't know.
Or we might be okay with 5 years, but at least we can have the conversation. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so I think you're not saying we need a tightly drawn, specified plan saying this tree here, that tree here, this tree here, that tree there.
No.
Right. Okay.
No,
okay.
not at all.
That's helpful. And I think that addresses the concern Paul raised, because he's right. If we get too far into it, you take a look at the landscaping, or you take a look at the landscape plans, or you take a look at the park and trail study, and it's like there's 15 grand, and it's like, holy mackerel. That's like, do we still know what we're going to do now that that's done? I think we still have to have more meetings on it. Kelly, you were going to say something?
No, I think what you just said is a very important distinction, because it's came up a couple times in the past few meetings. And to say that, we would want to have bids on something like that's a very defined process, for the city. Mm-hmm. And that means to contractors that you've approved a project and you have a budget and you now want to bid. Mm-hmm. So I think what you said is really key in this planning process is we don't want bids. We want like ballpark, in general, what would it cost to do a project like this?
Perfect example. We don't have a bid yet to repave the parking lot behind City Hall, but we do have it in the capital plan, and there's a number. How do we get that number? I said to Chris Cooper, I said, rule of thumb, what should we count on per square foot if we want to do a parking lot? He goes, well, this is no firm bid, but you ought to be counting on X to Y. So I took that number, added a little bit to it, and that's the number that's in the capital budget.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you're looking for, right, Kev? Is that kind of stuff? Oop. Maybe he's in transit to his living room.
Yeah, that's I gotta keep unmuting myself, and I'm not.
All right.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for.
Okay. All right. So now let me summarize your amendment real quick and make sure that we've got it all. Okay. You would like to propose an amendment to the budget that would reduce the tree service line item in the budget to 20,000, from 50 to 20,000, and would, for this year, zero out the parks and trails enhancement and the playground equipment numbers for this fiscal year. Is that right?
Yes. And,
Okay.
and for the same reasons of what you just said, like,
Right.
what's the plan here?
Right.
I need a little bit more information.
Well, and I think Paul feels the same way about his recommendations too, is that it's very much, if we say, no, we're going to let the fire department do their own strategic plan, and 6 months into it, we're like, okay, this is not working. Now the plan is figure out what it's going to take. What's the scope of work on that? We're going to have to dry up because we're going to have to hire a consultant.
Right.
Then Paul can go like, yeah, we have to do it because we're just going nowhere fast. So on the other hand, they may get it done and then we save the money. So I think that's fair. Question for you, Kev. The second half of Paul's amendment included a target number for the general fund levy. Are you okay with that target number, or would you propose that in your amendment that target on the general fund levy be reduced even further with these changes? And let me preface this question this way. The budget now balances because we dip into general fund surplus anyway. So it's entirely possible to say, we want to cut the spending, keep the general fund levy around 626. And all that means is we don't hit the general fund surplus quite as hard. Okay. Or if you say, no, I really think it needs to be close to 6. Well, then if the rest of the council feels that that's acceptable, then we'll have to hit that general fund surplus harder, and we'll have to deal with the ramifications of that later on. This year, we have the flexibility to be able to do that. We won't always have that flexibility. So I'm going to ask you, do you have?
I would like to see it closer to 6 for.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
That's what I would. I mean, we went from 6.8 to what, 6.2, and you take off a little more.
6.8 to 6.26, realistically.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if we got down to 6, I mean, that's, I don't know, not terribly far off.
Okay.
I don't know. That's just my thoughts, but that's what I would like to see.
No?
I think that's a compromise to where some residents can feel some benefits of our excess funds and some of our bonds coming up without giving it all back, I guess.
So here's the amendment as I hear it, and you tell me if you agree and want to make this as an amendment. You want to amend the proposed budget by reducing the tree service forestry line item from 50,000 to 20,000, and zero out the budget line items for playground equipment and park and trail enhancement for this year. You want to make those zero, with the intention of reducing the general fund levy from an estimated $6.26 per thousand to somewhere near $6 a thousand. Is that close enough? Does that sound right, Kev? You muted.
Sorry.
It's okay.
If you reduce the 2 park items and you reduce the trees down to 20,000, what does that take the levy to? That's what I would be. I don't know if it's 6 or it's 6.15 or what, but that's what I would like to see. I'm not saying it has to be 6, but if you take those things off, it should reduce the levy by something.
Well, it can, if we wanted to, because we just make up the difference with the fund surplus. That's what I'm saying. that you can push the levy number where you want it based on how much of the fund surplus you're going to use.
Yeah, so I'm interpreting what Kevin's saying as if you reduce those two items, then you're not necessarily increasing the amount that you're taking from surplus. You just would reduce, reduce the amount that would be required to include in the general levy by that amount, and then it would be the same. You'd be expecting to draw the same amount from surplus.
Oh, yeah. I don't know exactly how much. I'm sure that it would be under 6.
That's I think that's along the
point.
lines that I'm thinking of, is what
Okay.
Paul said.
Okay.
You know, I could support, you know, if you don't, we don't have to go less than 6. So if you think it would take us beyond that, you know, and I'd say I'd be happy, or, you know, I think it would be
I mean,
acceptable.
it may take us to 6.1. I don't know. It's just whatever that dollar amount equates to off the general levy. That's what I'd like to see it come down to.
Mhm.
I don't know what that number is.
Go ahead, Anthony.
505. With Paul's subtractions and these subtractions, I get to 505.
That's way different than 6.26.
Yeah, no, because I actually had Katie run the numbers based on Paul's suggestions, and we got this 626. But I think your point, though, Anthony, is that those numbers, Paul's suggestions were coming off the capital projects list and reduce the capital draw, as opposed to Kevin's suggestions are coming out of the operating fund.
So what I'm saying is, if we were at 626 and I subtract another 80,000, I get 505. I think, if I did my math right.
Well, either way, is that a change in a number that you can live with, Anthony? Because I know we talked about how you felt about the budget.
You're right on the edge of my comfort zone there. I'm just gonna say, like, don't anybody throw out any more ideas for cutting it down, because that's it for me. Well, or do it and just I'm the no vote on this one, because that takes us down to 341, and if I divide that by 67, 721, I get 504, $5.04.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be a little reluctant to go that low.
Well, I think if everybody could live with it, and you can take out the items or reduce the items that Paul and Kevin are asking for, you know, wherever it ended up with those items gone, I mean.
One thing I'd say about the both the forest plan, or the forest management, and the park maintenance would be, you know, if there's something we think it's more likely to have us act on more immediately, you know, like we've have a higher level of confidence that we would actually start to execute some work on that, then perhaps not zero it, but reduce it. Just a thought there. And the other thought I had was some of those things might be subject to grants that, you know, like the forest management for sure. But, you know, maybe at both of those things, I could see there being grant opportunities. So we just have to, I don't know if we zeroed it and then we successfully received a grant, what the implications are there. But
well, I just, as a point of information, I think the city's made some strategic errors in the past of trying to budget grant income. And, you know, this is why some of our AFR reports, when you look at it, we've got operating budgets of over $2 million in the budget, and we spent $900,000 in reality because we didn't get the $1 million grant that was in the budget. And then all of the percentages for all of the expenditures are weird for that one year because of bad forecasting.
yeah, but I mean, if you don't account for it, if you made it zero and then you did get the grant, then you'd have to do an amendment, I guess.
Yeah. Yep. But you can always amend to spend non-tax revenue.
Yeah,
I mean, that's kind of like if you take a look at what we did with the resolution we passed on the CDBG grant for the Meals to Go program.
right.
Once we knew we had the 7,500, then you guys agreed to go ahead and take the money out of the fund reserve so that we could go ahead and spend the money and get it reimbursed, which is what we did.
Sure.
So,
Well, we got this thing with Quercus here coming up Saturday.
mhm.
So by us going to 0 for this year, that means that's not going to do anything unless they can get a grant.
It's a good question. Let me take a look here real quick and see if I can come up with some answers there.
I think when Kevin and I were talking about this earlier, there's already 64.99 is the outside contractor landscaping budget line item.
Mhm.
So I
think
don't,
that's Quercus, yeah.
yeah, I think there, no, that seemed a little bit low. I don't remember what the contract amount is off the top of my head, but I mean, that is in there. The mowing contractor's in there in a different spot. So I mean, some of this stuff's already been covered at least to some extent. So, and again, anything we don't have funded, like I'm confident we've got it in the spare fund. It's just, I don't want us to burn through the whole thing this year and then next year have to have a huge fight where we really do have to raise taxes a whole bunch because we did this year.
That's a legitimate concern. I mean, we're looking at realistically the fund surplus at the end of this year would be somewhere, we think, between 800,000 and $1 million, maybe $1.1 million or $1.2 million. And that's based on a couple of numbers yet to come in from the state. But say that it comes in at the 800,000 number, which is kind of what's in the system right now. The current budget, the way it's proposed, spends another 400,000 of that. That leaves 400,000. And we heard Eric talk about how the council was talking about maybe we should have $600,000 in reserves. Well, 400,000, obviously, less than 600 grand. So essentially, that blows through the reserve. Now, Paul's suggestion amendment, the amendment that was approved, would propose removing $100 and some odd $1,000 of proposed expenses out of the budget. So that would get us closer to about that 600,000 number. Okay, but you know, just how much more do we want to go ahead and cut it? I don't know. My personal opinion, we still need to go ahead and get a little bit of clarity as far as like the amendment from Kevin. I think we have a good understanding of what he would like to remove from the expense side. And on the revenue side, as I understand it, he's saying, let the tax rate fall where the tax rate may fall. And our best guess right now, I was hoping that would get us closer to 6. Anthony's number, though, is probably more accurate because these would cut operating expenses directly out of the budget, would get us closer to 5. The end result of that, this may be the last year that we have a general fund surplus to really talk, a significant general fund surplus, where we can talk about being able to pay for projects out of that surplus. Is that the end of the road? No, but what it does mean is that if there are any big projects that come up, we either need to make sure that we identify them far enough ahead that we have time to save for them, or you raise taxes to go ahead and pay for them, or you issue some kind of debt.
I have a comment.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, you are correct in that, you know, it's going to reduce our surplus, but the benefit of doing what we're doing right now is we have a much better handle on future budgets and are doing a much better job of planning for future things, so that we shouldn't be incurring huge expenses in our excess funds. I mean, I think you've done a good job of laying out a plan of planning for just about everything.
Mm-hmm.
So that's on the positive side.
Yep.
That's my comment.
Well, yeah, look, any decision we make, the city will be fine this year. The question is, you know, just how do you want it, when you look at this going forward down the road, just, you know, make sure that your eyes are open but if we do spend down the surplus to the extent that we're talking about, and yet we're not managing our total tax levy in a way to be able to kind of cover some of those operating expenses that we're talking about until maybe next year, that you may be talking about an increase next year. You're going to have $1 drop off on the GO bond. Maybe you can go ahead and pick that back up and you'll be at closer to 6, but you still may need to raise that number a little bit in order to make things balance. But you know what? You may go like, it's worth it, because then we've got the general fund surplus to the point where it's $300,000 to $400,000, which is pretty much what we should have, I think, for emergencies and for cash management. And there's no savings. If you've got a big emergency project that comes up, we're gonna have to be creative in some other way to pay for it. That's all. So, Kev, as I'm hearing it, let's make sure we address your amendment, because we got a little sidetracked. I think everyone's clear as to what you're recommending the cut be, and the goal would be to get the general fund levy down to whatever those cuts drop the general fund spending to. Our guess right now, we're going to say we're assuming that number is around $5 to $5.10 per thousand, based on Anthony's calculation. Does that sound like your amendment? You're muted, buddy. Okay.
If that's the number.
Okay. So that's the best number that we can come up with, not having the software here to calculate it. So that is the amendment. I need a second.
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I just throw this out before we vote. I support Kevin's ideas for how he wants to treat the line items. I feel like I do hear what you're saying about the reducing the surplus, and I think that there might be some I think it would be I think we'd be doing ourselves a favor for the future if we tried to avoid reducing it too drastically. Maybe we can split the difference somehow. A reduction, but not the entire thing.
Okay.
I think I could support that better.
Okay. All right. This is a debate related to the amendment, so let's get a second so we can consider the amendment.
Second.
I have a second from Anthony. Okay, so Paul, getting back to your comment. So you feel like you could support this if we maybe weren't quite so aggressive as far as the levy cut?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's basically it, yeah.
Okay. Any idea of where you would be comfortable seeing that levy?
Well, you could, I guess, start with the kind of a 50-50, cut it in the middle.
Okay. Okay. So that's one thought. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to add to that? Kelly, go ahead.
Well, I think I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like it's kind of hard to say, we'll just cut the levy, let's meet halfway in between on the levy, because the levy is determined by the budget. So that's kind of working backwards. You sort of have to fix the budget to adjust the levy.
No, it's just saying don't reduce the surplus by the entire amount of the item that we removed. I guess
Okay.
I'd put it that way.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Any other comments or thoughts? If to do that, we need to have that levy around, I don't know, $5.50 instead of $5.10. Is that going to be a problem for people? I don't know. Kevin?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Any thoughts, Kev?
No, I'm good with that.
Okay.
I think it's a compromise.
Anthony?
Trying to do the math quick.
Okay.
But no, I think that's okay. So it's 76 cents difference between Paul's. So that would cut 67. Oh, shit. Sorry. I gotta 8 instead of a times. France. I'll go to the next person. I'll get you a number here in a second.
It's a good thing Anthony's our numbers man. Okay, good. Well, I think we're going to be able to get there. So let's figure it out here real quick.
Hey, I'm not meaning to be a downer on Anthony, but I mean, does this calculations have to be verified or checked by somebody else other than a council person? All the math?
Well, they'll put it in that formula.
Yeah, Anthony's going to be pretty close. It may be off by a few tenths of a cent or whatever, but
Okay.
So just for reference, right now you've got 50,000, 25,000, 25,000. And if you cut 51,000 off of it, it would get us right to 5.5 on that general levy. So basically cut them all in half.
If we took all those numbers and cut them in half.
Yep. That'd be pretty close. I think if I'm doing my math right.
Kevin, are you okay with that?
Yeah. Yep.
So let's go ahead and make a motion for a friendly amendment to Kevin's amendment. And this is
Well, so is that not cutting anything that Paul's amendment?
That's right. Paul's amendment.
We're cutting. Oh, okay.
In addition to Paul's amendment.
Yeah. So I took the number we started with from Paul's, which was 626, and then I subtracted 5.5, which gave me 76 cents. I multiplied that by the total valuation of the city, which gave me $51,000. And so if we subtract an additional 51,000 beyond what Paul already did, that theoretically should get us right around 550.
Yep. So the friendly amendment to the amendment is instead of reducing the tree service number from 50,000 to 20,000, we reduce it only to 25,000. And instead of zeroing out the budgets for the park and trail, the parks and trails enhancements and the playground equipment numbers, we just cut those numbers in half to 25,000 each. With the stated goal of getting the general fund levy to around $5.50 per thousand.
So amended.
Does that sound okay to you, Kev?
Well, I'm still confused about the math. So hear me out. Is this right? So Paul cut out $130,000, and that only took the general levy from 6.8 to 6.24, and then I cut out half. I cut out basically only 50,000 now, and it takes it from 6.24 to 5.5.
Right, because your cuts came directly out of the general fund, general operations fund.
Okay.
Paul's came out.
Gotcha. I'm good.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm good.
I could not have done the math that Katie did with the computer for Paul's stuff.
Right.
The only reason I can do this for yours is because it's all in the general budget.
Yep.
Okay. I got it. I'm good.
All right. So I hear Kevin accepting the friendly amendment. I need a motion to approve the friendly amendment.
Second.
I have a second.
Or-
I need a motion.
So moved. Second. Whatever. I'll be the other one.
Okay. I have a motion from Anthony, a second from Doug. Let's do a quick vote on the friendly amendment real quick. Paul?
Aye.
Kelly?
Aye.
Kevin?
Aye.
Doug?
Aye.
Anthony?
Aye.
So we have an amended amendment now to vote on the amended amendment. Kevin?
Aye.
Kevin's an aye. Paul?
Aye.
Paul's an aye. Doug?
Aye.
Doug's an aye. Anthony?
Aye.
Anthony's an aye. Kelly?
Aye.
Kelly's an aye. Okay. So we now have an amended proposed budget that drops the general fund levy to somewhere around $5.50 a thousand. We'll confirm that for sure tomorrow when we have Katie rerun the numbers. But we also have made the corresponding cuts to the proposed spending, as we've noted during the course of this meeting. So we have an amendment. Are there any other amendments that people would like to make to the proposed budget? Hearing none, I'd like to go ahead and do a roll call vote to certify our fiscal 22 budget. Let me start with Kelly,
I,
Paul,
Aye.
Kevin,
Aye.
Anthony,
Aye.
Doug.
Aye.
We have a certified budget for the coming year. Thank you very much, everybody.
Ooh.
Yay.
That didn't hurt so much.
Kent, go have a beer now.
That's right. There are fireworks over town hall at the moment, just from coming from Kent's office. I'll just let everyone know that. All right, the next item on the agenda is Resolution 2021-13. This is a resolution determining an area in the city to become an economic development and blighted area, and that the rehabilitation, conservation, redevelopment, development, or a combination thereof of such areas necessary in the interest of public health, safety, or welfare of the residents of the city, designing such an area as appropriate for urban renewal projects, and adopting the Fenno Drive Urban Renewal Plan. The council is being asked to review and approve, or modify and approve, or reject the Urban Renewal Plan as it's been as it's proposed. I can go into more detail about it, but essentially the plan consists of 5 projects. One project is the rehabilitation of Fenno Road. One project is the rehabilitation of Fenno Drive. One project is the acquisition and disposition of the house at 1147 Fenno Drive. One project is the acquisition and disposition of the house at the corner of Valley Drive and Fenno Road. And one project is related to the development agreement that we'll be considering later, related to the Belmont Townhomes apartment project on Belmont Road. What we're talking about right now, though, is the plan to do those 5 projects. So we can either approve that plan and then manage that plan down the road, which means we can agree to do all of the projects outlined in the plan, or we can agree to only do some of those projects in the plan. Or we can amend the plan and approve the amended plan, which may include only some of those projects. Or you can say, screw it, we don't need no development plan for urban renewal area. I'm going to tell you, I don't agree with that, but you can decide that, and then you can reject the plan. All right. So those are the 3 options. Kent, is there anything else that I've missed in my very brief summary? We've gone through this now with a few town hall meetings and videos and other stuff, and I don't know if there's anything else that we need to go ahead and add to this at this point. Do you have anything?
No, the only thing I think that council needs to be aware of is there's been several council members who asked me for a maintenance plan, and we've met with the engineer, and all the maintenance plans are in this project. So the remaining roads within that need to be corrected or have some sort of maintenance are dealt with in this plan.
Okay, good to know. Now, are there any general questions about the plan or about what we're going to be voting on before we take this up for consideration? No? Okay. Let's get a motion in a second so we can consider this resolution, and then we can deliberate on it. If you want to make an amendment to it, we can do that. If you want to bag on it, you can do that. If you want to sing its praises, you can do that. Okay, so I need a motion from Doug. I need a second.
Second.
Okay, I have a second from, who was that?
I said a second.
Oh, okay, Kelly, sorry about that. I thought I heard 2 voices at once, and my feeble eyesight just isn't what it used to be. Okay. Let me go ahead and go council member by council member. You feel free to opine or ask questions. We'll do the best we can to answer those questions. Let me start with Doug, since you are in that area. You have any insights or offerings you want to put up here?
Well, I think the plan overall is a really good idea. I mean, we need to get rid of the houses that are blighted. We need the road fixed. We on Fenno Hill and Fenno Drive. And I'm not crazy about the fifth one, but I'm, for argument's sake, I'm even in favor of that.
Okay,
So
good enough.
that's the least of my favorite there.
Understood. I'm guessing you aren't going to be the only council member that feels that way, but just call it a wild guess. Let's go ahead and go to Kelly next. Kelly, you have any thoughts on this or any questions?
Oh, I was just trying to find, what is he talking about, the fifth one? What is
That's
he
the
looking
Belmont.
at?
That's the Belmont Townhome project. So the fifth.
Oh, he's talking about the
project-
development
Yes.
agreement.
The-
Okay,
The fifth project is a rebate,
okay,
a grant back to that developer to do that project.
right. But what we're talking about right now is the urban renewal plan.
That's right. We're talking about the
Okay.
urban renewal plan.
I'm in favor of the urban renewal plan.
Okay.
We need to fix the roads. If there's free money on the table, I think we need to use it.
Okay. Good. Anything else?
Nope.
Okay. Paul, how about you?
Thanks, Mike. I'd say I'm in agreement with the desired end state, final state of all of these things. And I agree that we want those houses to be rehabilitated, those two in the Fenno area. And how that would be accomplished to me is, I think I would be, we could be flexible on that. And if we actually found interested buyers for the home, so that would be willing to work on those, I'd say that would be good for the city. But I agree, if that did not take place, that we would want to resolve that, soon. We don't want it to linger. We've already done the renewal plan, and I don't think there's any reason not to adopt it.
Okay. Anthony, your turn.
I guess, yeah, pretty much just more of the same. We've heard lots of good feedback from the neighbors in the area that they, want all these things done. The only one that's had any potential negative views is obviously the Belmont Road thing. And but overall, I think even the parts that I've heard about that is that people would like to see something of an improvement at Belmont Road there. So, but maybe just not exactly what's proposed. So I think, yeah, I'm good with the urban renewal plan part of this.
Okay. Okay. Kevin, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think everybody's in agreement on doing what needs to be done. It's how that's, I think, a difference amongst people. I'm not for urban renewal plan. I think the roads can be paid for by the city on our own. I think the house on Valley should get sold to a third party. And the other house, in the very little research I've done, because at one time we're talking about grants and doing different things, and it's not so much designated an urban renewal plan that helps that house, but it's what you do if you demolish that house and what you put up. If you put up green space or a park, there's a lot more opportunities for grants. Whether it's an urban renewal project or not, I don't see benefit in doing, and I'm against the Belmont project. So that's my thoughts.
Okay, great. So just a couple things that I'll just throw on another log or two on the fire here before we go ahead and actually take a vote on it. You do have a couple of options. One, like I said, we can approve the plan as written. Two, you can amend the plan. Or three, you can reject the plan. When we originally started talking about the thing that really kind of spurred this on to begin with was the opportunity that maybe someone was interested in developing those townhome apartments along Belmont Road. I asked the council to go ahead and make sure that we had the authorization to move forward with putting together an economic incentive package for consideration, not not anything that we can commit to until the council signed off on it. And that part of that program included taking a look at making sure that whatever development would be done along Belmont Road, there would be a greater benefit to the city. That eventually led to the realization that we had some streets that needed work and 2 homes that are legitimately blighted properties and uninhabitable. In addition to that, the property along Belmont Road generates about $1,200 a year in property tax revenue to the city, which is, I think, generally, while it's appreciated, it's not really up to the potential that it could be generating. Okay. So what the Urban Renewal Plan does basically is it sets aside 5 projects to go ahead, and 2 of them address the blighted property issue, 2 of them address the road issue, and the third one, as it stands, is basically saying we'll give a developer a grant of money to go ahead and increase the value and the revenue potential of that property. Now, I understand that the current project, the way it's proposed, there may be some reluctance to do that. There's concern that there may be that however that grant might be funded, whether it's through a TIF or some other mechanism, is kind of distasteful to a lot of people. Totally understand that. And it doesn't have to be done that way if you don't want it to be. The one thing I will point out is that if you can improve the value of that property, there is a financial benefit to the city in terms of tax revenue that then also is shared among all the residents of the city, in theory at least, by making sure that our taxes can remain as low as they can possibly be. That being said, I think it's really we're to a point now where you as a council have the options in front of you and you can make some decisions. You can approve the thing as it's presented. You can amend it and say, we only want to do the first 4 projects and we're going to lop off the 5th one. That's an option. You can make that as an amendment. I will say this, if you approve the plan as it's written, what you've really done is you've left all the options on the table for you to consider down the road. Just because you approve the plan doesn't mean you have to approve the development agreement, nor do you have to go ahead and authorize that particular project if it doesn't meet the specifications under your urban renewal plan. The last thing I'd point out is the fact that we've already, part of the money that was authorized by the council essentially made sure that we could put together some sort of plan. This urban renewal plan does provide us with opportunities or the ability, it gives us a little bit more flexibility when it comes to looking at all the different alternative sources of finance that we might be able to look at in order to be able to finance these projects. I think it's also important to note that the statement, we could just pay for these road projects out of our general fund surplus based on your based on your decisions related to the vote you just took, is no longer valid. You're not going to have that much surplus to be able to do that Fenno Drive project out of the surplus. That doesn't mean that we can't. If we do some planning and work on it for a few years, we may have the money to be able to do that. But it needs to be put into the plan, and we need to go ahead and handle it that way. I'm not saying that we wouldn't want to. I just want to make sure that you understand that that's ramification of what we're talking about with the decision you just made. All right, so all that being said, we have a motion and a second on this urban renewal plan. Are there any requests to go ahead and amend the plan as it's presented? I don't hear anyone asking to go ahead and make an amendment to the urban renewal plan as it's presented. So we have a motion, we have a second. We need to go ahead and vote as to whether or not you will adopt the urban renewal plan. So let me go ahead and do a roll call vote here real quick. Let me start with Paul.
I like what you said as far as the keeping all our options on the table. I think that's a appropriate approach, and I'll support it. So I'll say aye.
Okay. Anthony.
Aye.
Okay. Kevin,
Nay.
all right.
Nay.
Nope, that's fine. Kelly,
Aye.
all right. And Doug.
Aye.
So the urban renewal plan is accepted. Thank you very much. Let's move along to the next item on the agenda. And again, we have a very similar array of options available to the council. Resolution 2021-14 is a resolution approving and authorizing the execution of the development agreement by and between the City of Riverdale and the Belmont Development Properties. This relates to the project on Belmont Road. Let me first ask if anyone present here would like to go ahead and address this project. I imagine we might have a couple residents that might want to go ahead and chime in. And if you do, you can send me a message and I'll make sure that you have a chance to talk. I know Eric wants to have a chance to say something. Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, thank you. I just would restate some of the objections I've raised previously with regard to the plan. I think that the council should first and foremost take into consideration the outcome and well-being of the current residents that live right next to the planned project, primarily the Wells. I think that should be their first concern. I don't think that this kind of project fits within the residential package they have down there. And I don't think that the city should get involved in the financing of this project and the associated requests that have been made. Although I do appreciate the professionalism of the developer and his discussions with us, I just don't think it's the right kind of project for us to do. And in essence, that's my statement. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. All right. Any other residents like to address things? I know that we've got a couple here. Tell you what, if you do have something, if you've got a question or a concern you don't feel comfortable addressing the council with, you can always send me a chat message by clicking on the little speech bubble down here at the bottom of the window and sending it, just posting it, and I'll make sure that it gets read. Let's go ahead and ask members of council, do you have any questions in general that as far as just general information questions at this point? Anybody? Kelly, you got any questions right off the top?
Well, I mean, based on some of the things we talked about earlier today, let me check off my list here. Okay, got it. So a couple issues I have remaining. I mean, I have concerns about a TIF, obviously. Mm-hmm. And then when I was talking to one of the homeowners, actually right there, who would be dislocated, he mentioned to me that, and actually I mean, I read it like a week ago, but I believe in the development agreement, it says that these will be or could be rentals.
Well, yeah, they are.
They are rentals.
They're apartments. Yeah, it's multi-unit housing. These are apartments.
Okay, so there's no option to be like an owner occupied like condos.
Correct.
Okay, it's not an option. Okay. And then the other thing was I went and talked to the Wells, Mr. Wells last week also, and he's still concerned, and I will have to agree with him about the proposed, what do you call it, like a footprint of, you know, how these things would go in, and that there would be, I think, 12 driveways off onto Belmont. And just when I was standing there talking to him, or no, it was when I was talking to the other neighbor, cars were whizzing by so fast. I mean, I know the speed limit's 35, but you come up over a hill and then there's a little bit of a curve there. And I can't imagine adding 12 driveways right there. That just doesn't seem like a good idea. Mm-hmm. And I'm concerned about, you know, taking these 3 lots and jamming in this, you know, 12 unit building. I mean, I know you said the developer wouldn't go any smaller because then he, you know, his profit margin would go down. But like if he could reduce it by 1 or 2 units and, you know, sort of narrow up that footprint. And I guess when I first thought about this, I thought about it being where there was 1 driveway off onto Belmont. you know, that, you know, people would pull in on one driveway and then maybe go to their units. But I don't see how this is a good idea. So
Okay.
do you have any information that could, you know, persuade me that the way the builder has laid out how he wants to build this is a good idea?
Well, let me make something perfectly clear. I'm not really advocating one way or another. My request to the council and what I was authorized to do by the council was to work on putting together the best deal that I thought we could do and present it to the council for consideration. I think that the concerns about traffic safety and about stormwater management and and that kind of thing, I think that those are all legitimate. And we're talking about a developer with a reputation for doing very high quality work. And when he says that they, you know, will be able to work that out, I'm willing to go ahead and take that on its face. However, I'm also not going to diminish the concerns that are raised by the council in that regard. What we're looking at is a project that could bring significantly more tax revenue to the city. And I think you just need to go ahead and weigh it and say, look, we're talking about having, you know, what is the potential environmental impact, traffic impact, what's the impact on the neighbors that are surrounding it. There's certainly, I think, been some concerns, and the Welleses are here tonight and want to have a chance to address the council, and we're going to give them that opportunity. I think that these are all legitimate issues, and I'm not really here to sell the deal. I mean, it's not.
Well, right. It's just I've never talked.
I want you guys to seriously
Right.
debate it and make a decision you feel comfortable with.
Right. Like I've never met the developer. I've never talked to these people. So that's just why I ask you, because you have talked to them. So I didn't know if you had any different information that could help me make my decision, I guess.
Please remember there is a process here. You still have multiple processes. You still have to change the zoning. You still have a preliminary plat to approve. You still have a final plat to approve. You still have engineering review. There's so many steps yet that we have to get through. And those driveway questions and those sightline questions and those drainage questions will all be at a later date. You know, I know this is a big project, but you just got to nibble the cookie. You got to just nibble at it until you get it down. So I know that we showed you a conceptual drawing, but we were trying. The developer is trying to be upfront, and sometimes when you put something out there, it's misconstrued. So just take it step by step and piece by piece, and let the preliminary plat go, let the engineering review go, let the final plat go. And I'm even missing steps, but there's a lot of processes there. So just take it piece by piece, please.
Yep. But I think that it's good that these concerns are aired and that they're brought out. And interestingly enough, by approving the urban renewal plan the way you did, should you elect to either modify the development agreement in a way that the developer may not find to be acceptable in this case, or reject this development agreement, that doesn't mean that at some point down the road, there won't be another development opportunity that comes up. I just honestly don't see happening as far as I can look ahead, you know, with my involvement with the city, but there might be. And if you've got it in the plan, at least you can consider it. And you have something, you have a tool in your toolbox you can use if you decide to use it. So just because you pass the urban renewal plan doesn't mean you have to do this deal. That's what I'm saying. If that helps. I don't know if that helps clarify things for people. Real quick before we get in, yeah, you bet. So before we get into other comments from council members, I am going to ask the Welleses if you can unmute your phone. You said you have a comment that you'd like to make, and we welcome you here and ask for your input.
Hello. Yeah, I've kind of gone over this a couple times. I just wanted to reiterate, we talk about the taxes, or you mentioned about the taxes. listening to the last couple budget meetings, that it seems to be the city's in a pretty good surplus of money and taxes that are put in. Just because we can, does that mean we should? Something to look at. I realize the city's always trying to better itself, and the more money it can get in. But we have the Woods Estate that is above and beyond that we've had in the last 50 years as far as revenue coming in. I guess I'd ask the council to look at, is this an image that you would want in Riverdale? If they had come to you for the Woods Edition and said, hey, we want to build 30 townhouses up there, it's going to give you $300,000 in tax revenue. Is that the look you'd want? Do you want this right on the property of Riverdale? Being such a large structure that they're looking at putting in this, among the other things, I don't think water runoff. I know the builder can say what he say or does what he does, but I've lived here my whole life. I know the water that comes off of Fenno Road down that hill, the water main, the backwaters from the existing houses to the hill. Mm-hmm. Their basements are flooded. There's a lot to contend with that you don't see on a geological map just because of elevation. I wish and to answer some of Kelly's questions, I did talk to the builder, super nice guy. He called me after the first meeting and we talked. But the gist I got from him that this was kind of the deal. It was 12 townhouses. He didn't sound like he was willing to or able to downsize it. I mean, I think 6 or 8 would fit in there. Great. It wouldn't be a huge eyesore. And it'd fit in the usable amount of property, but it didn't, and maybe somebody could go to him and ask him if he's got any leeway there, but it didn't sound like to me there was. It was, this is what we're proposing, take it or leave it type of thing. I personally, we don't want it because we're going to have to look at 12 townhouses, 12 driveways, 12 garages. And I don't know that they're going to have 12 people that are going to pay the kind of money that they want for it, for the area. I don't know. They could be, but it just doesn't seem like the location that's going to draw that kind of money, $1,800 to $2,000 a month. My future concern would be if they can't get the money, then it gets dropped down in price. What are we ending up with? And obviously that's not on the city. The money's still going to be, paid out through the TIF or whatever is happening with it. But, what's going to end up there in the future? I don't know. It's a guess, but that's just some comments I had on it.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate your comments. Terry Stickler mentioned that she's got some serious concerns about the safety issues with the townhouse project. I'm presuming there, and Terry, feel free to chime in if I'm misstating this, but I would assume that most of those concerns you're talking about traffic safety, I'm guessing. But also she mentions that, she doesn't want to see the city get involved with the TIF agreement. We're not actually talking about TIF at this point. That would be a conversation only after the development agreement is agreed to, and we decide to go ahead and talk about how we would fund the grants coming back that are spelled out in the development agreement. But so noted. Okay, Terry, was it primarily traffic that you were concerned about, or were there other safety issues?
I'm very concerned about the traffic issue. The Belmont Road and the number of driveways, and so you have 12 units, and most likely each unit has 2 cars even. So that's an awful lot of people trying to back out or pull out onto Belmont Road. I'm also concerned with the safety of that hillside and the security of this, how secure that is with the water and coming down toward those townhouses. Kind of like Jeff just addressed, that's really tied up against that hillside, and all it sounded like that they were going to put some kind of a pony wall in there just up so far. And that's a concern of mine too. Plus, I truly don't see where this fits the overall plan of what Riverdale has always wanted.
Mhm.
Yeah, maybe a 6-unit, which is what is even on our comprehensive plan, but 12, and then there's more land there too, which I could see where down the road a piece to say, well, we're going to put another 6 or 12 units in on top of the hill instead, or someplace else. So, yeah, so those are my concerns and my fears.
Okay. All right, great. So if there are any other residents that have any questions or comments, I'm going to finish polling the council real quick. So you've got a few minutes yet to go ahead and send me a chat. Thank you very much, Terry, and much appreciated. Anthony, do you have any questions or concerns or comments that you want to voice now before we deliberate?
I obviously, like, I agree with the engineering concerns and stuff about just the tightness of the space. I talked to Ken Beck at the county. I was just curious about, you guys always write us and say you don't like TIF, so what's the other alternative here? And he did mention that Davenport's got a couple of like tax credit programs that they use that are different. And I guess I kind of like the idea of those. If we're gonna, again, I'd rather debate the merit of that sort of a thing, where it's just a tax credit down the road, and it's a little bit more invested in the community instead of just a guy coming from Bettendorf taking the money and running off with it.
Yeah. Hold on one second though, real quick, because that's not what we're talking about. What you're describing, and I saw that in your email message or something you posted, I can't remember, where Ken Beck said, yeah, the developer would take the money and skedaddle with it or whatever. And that's how it worked in LeClaire. And you can't do that anymore in the state of Iowa. You can't do that. So the development agreement is set up that it's paid out over 16 years after the project is generating tax revenue. So, it's really not a situation of someone getting a big check and then like not following through by building, what happened.
But this one is, because that's what he told us he's going to do. I mean, he said he's got a buyer lined up and he's selling it and he's out of here. I mean, he told us that. So
after it's built.
Well, I know, but I mean, I don't know. I just don't. I'd much rather like know that the money was being invested in the community at the same time. I don't know. I mean, again, I'm not saying like I'm not trying to say he's like a bad guy or anything, and he's going to do anything bad. I've went and looked at a couple of their other properties and stuff too, and they're a reputable company. No, I don't. Right, I'm not trying to. But I just, again, I would, if I had $600 or whatever, I'd rather invest that $600 in somebody that already lives here than in somebody that doesn't, I guess, is my, and I don't know. And I know there's, you go round and round about how that works or whatever, but anyway, I just, and I really like, the comments we got this year on the TIF stuff from the auditor and that too. And I just don't, I'm still just not, I can't get on board with the TIF thing. So
we're not talking about a TIF in the development agreement. The development agreement specifically says it's a grant coming back. How it's funded still remains up in the air. But I think what I hear is you saying you're not, and it kind of reflects, I think, too, what the point that Eric made. Really, does the city need to be involved in helping to contribute proceeds to a project like this? Essentially, ensuring a profit. It's a legitimate question. So yeah.
So anyway, that's kind of where I'm at with it. So
okay, all right, great. Any let's see, Kev, have I asked you yet? I don't think I have, but I can imagine how you feel about this. Just on a wild guess.
I don't have any questions.
Okay, didn't think so. Doug, you have any comments or questions on this?
Well, just a comment. As a guy who lives on a hill and can see a long ways, if I lived in those apartments, my view would be of a cemetery and of a hillside on the backside.
Mhm.
I would never put my money of $1,800 to $2,000 a month into a view like that.
Mhm.
That's all I got.
Okay, good enough. So those are the general comments. I know I do not have any additional questions from residents. Let's go ahead and get a motion in a second so we can consider this development agreement. I need a motion.
So moved.
A motion from Kelly
Second.
and a second from Anthony. All right. Are there any amendments you would like to make to this development agreement, or should we just go ahead and vote on it, yes or no?
I'm ready to vote.
Kelly's ready to vote. Paul, you ready to vote?
Yeah,
Doug's ready to vote. Kevin, you ready to vote? Kevin's ready to vote. I know, because I think I know how Kevin's going to vote. Anthony, you ready to vote, or do you want to make some amendment?
No, I guess I'm okay. I think.
Okay. All right. Well, let's
Mike, could I just make a comment?
go ahead. Yeah.
You know, I almost would recommend that I could support it without the grants, but in truth, you know, I don't, even without all of that, I wouldn't necessarily think that it was a very good development for the community. So as far as the density and the placement on Belmont Road, the way it is, you know, all the concerns people raised. So even kind of without the grants, it's hard to support. And then you add that in and it's seems like just too much, it's too many negatives along with, and then add on that 300,000 of grants.
Okay. Thank you very much. Does anyone else have any additional comments they'd like to make? Kelly or Doug or Anthony or Kevin?
No.
Okay. All right, let's go ahead and vote. Something tells me this is going to go pretty quick. Kevin.
Nay.
Kevin is a nay against the development agreement. Anthony.
I don't know. I guess I'll go no for now.
Anthony is a nay against the agreement. Paul.
I'm an A.
Paul is a nay against the agreement. Kelly.
Nay.
Kelly's a nay against the agreement. Doug.
5 nays.
Doug is a nay against the agreement. The development agreement is not accepted. Given that the development agreement is not accepted, I would propose that there is no reason to consider resolution 2021-13, which is a resolution entering into the engineering services agreement with MSA to work on that project. So I am going to ask for the council's indulgence to go ahead and rescind that resolution from consideration.
Well, I'll move we table the resolution.
Yeah, actually, we don't need to. I'll just go ahead and take it off.
You just rescind it?
I'll just rescind it since there's no development agreement to provide engineering services for. So we'll just kind of hold that.
No action needed.
There's no action needed. So that being said, that's everything on our agenda. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So
No
moved.
moved.
I have a motion from Kelly and a second from Doug. Let's do a quick roll call vote. Kevin.
Aye.
Kevin's an aye.
Aye.
Kelly. Kelly.
Aye.
Kelly's an aye. Doug.
Aye.
Doug's an aye. Anthony.
Yeah, I guess I'll go with it too. Aye.
Oh, Anthony's
Wants to
so
stay.
long tonight. Okay, and Paul, how about you?
Aye.
Hey, you guys, this was a hard meeting, and I really appreciate your time and attention and making extra time out so that we can do this special meeting. So thank you very much to all the members of the council. Thank you also to all the citizens who came. We're having tremendous turnout at these virtual meetings. The next city council meeting will be next Tuesday. I'm asking members of council to attend in person in the community room, along with the city administrator, city engineer, and the fire chief. That being said, I'd prefer to stream that online via Facebook, and we'll have one person, probably Kent, monitoring for comments or questions that people have. I just don't feel comfortable right now filling up the community room with citizens. And I think if we have the council and the few staff people we've asked, that's pretty much all we can accept. So unless you have something as an individual citizen, something specific that you want to address in person to the council, I ask you attend virtually via Facebook. All right. If there are any changes to that, we'll be sure to let you know. But thank you very much for coming. I will be posting this video to the Riverdale Residents Facebook page, and we'll be sharing it with, and also to the website. So thank you very much. We stand adjourned, ladies and gentlemen.
Over and out.
Thank you very much,
Bye.
everybody.
Good night.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Bye, thank you.
You bet. We'll see you.